Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And once again, coming to you, my friends, from the left coast, Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network, and stand by a moment, folks. Need to raise the line audio. I cannot hear a thing of the... Keep it up. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Ratchet it up. Ratchet it up. Keep going. There we go. It's the old mix minus problem. Now take it down a little bit. No matter how it tests before the program, that's good. No matter how it tests before the program, it never is the same on the air. Anyway, folks, great to be back with you. We are, as usual, at 800-282-2882 and the same email address, rushbo@eibnet.us. And we'll be back, excuse me, back in the friendly confines of EIB Southern Command tomorrow. You know, it's interesting. You have a day off. Now, look at what happened yesterday. I got up. I had to fly out to the left coast for an event yesterday afternoon and evening. And I'm reading the news, and I see all this kerfuffle about Trump and the Democrat congresswoman in Florida and the supposed Trump insensitivity to the family and the mother. And I'm saying, you know, I'm really glad I don't have to deal with this today. Now, don't draw any incorrect conclusions from this, because my mind was focused on, you know, when it's not a work day, the performer's ego switches to other things. And I said, man, this stuff is just outrageous. And the assumptions that are made about Trump in order for people to say these things are what fascinate me. So having a day away and yet consuming the news, but not having a day of spoken about it, commentating on it or anything, I once again started analyzing things and put them in a perspective with as I say, a day away from actually staying in the loop and commenting on it. And I note some trends now, and they're subtle. The differences and the changes are subtle. The current leftist agenda is a very dedicated but subtle attempt. They have moved off Russia, if you've noticed. Now, it's still lurking there in the shadows, but the Russia thing appears to be falling apart, especially with a revelation here. This is from the Daily Caller. Congress is investigating whether or not the Obama Department of Justice used that phony, fraudulently, totally made up Trump dossier to get a FISA warrant. Now, we've been told that John Brennan of the CIA, when CIA director for Obama, and Clapper, the director of national intelligence, and Comey, when they saw the Trump dossier, they said, whoa! And they used it as the basis. That was the exact word that Brennan used, the basis to begin this whole investigation of Trump. Never mind that none of it has been verified. Literally none of it. And much of it has been shown to be flat out false, whether intentionally or not. The whole thing is literally made up. This is the famous Golden Showers Trump dossier. We find out that they said to us was the basis. It was so outrageous that if any of this was true, they said, we need to get to the bottom of it. Now, anybody with half a brain and anybody with any common sense would realize that wasn't true. And I don't believe for a moment that Brennan thought any of it was true. And I don't for a minute believe Comey thought any of it was true. And if they did, these people are more demented with poisoned minds due to partisanship than we can even imagine. I think they saw an opportunity. They are the establishment. They are the club. They have the power, and they can turn anything they want into something meaningful. At least they can try to. If they really believe this, that's a whole other ballgame. I don't believe they did, but I do believe they saw it as an opportunity. But now what we're learning, and I guess this follows, Congress is looking into whether the Obama Department of Justice, that would be Loretta Lynch, used this Trump dossier to go secure a FISA warrant. Now, it's one thing for the CIA and Brennan and his deep state guys to be looking into a phony series of events and then leaking a bunch of lies to the media in the hopes of discrediting Trump and getting rid of him. It's quite another to take something as bogus and false and made up as this is to the FISA court and get a surveillance warrant based on it. I gotta remember when I pound the table out here, it reverberates all across America. Forgive me on this, folks. I do my best to remember this. There's operational differences here, operational habits formed in the EIB Southern Command, which do not hold here. So I did that on purpose, but I'm going to try to talk myself out of this. The House and Senate are investigating whether the Obama regime used intelligence. There's not any intelligence in this thing. Used intelligence in a salacious Trump dossier as evidence before a secret federal survey. It's FISA. They don't even say it's FISA. Everybody knows what FISA is now, so why not just say that? Before a secret federal surveillance court to obtain permission to spy on Donald Trump campaign aides and later his transition team. The FBI used the dossier to secure permission to monitor the communications of Trump associate Carter Page based on U.S. officials briefed on the Russia investigation. CNN reported all that back in April. Now, the latest inquiries began October the 4th when the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence subpoenaed Fusion GPS, the political opposition research firm based in Washington, hired by the Democrats, who were instrumental in creating this phony, totally made-up dossier. Now, if it turns out they've used this to go get a FISA warrant, this is the lowest of the low. Republican Senate, they're using this fake, phony thing in order to get warrants to spy on Trump, his campaign aides, and don't believe it wasn't to include Trump. Here's the point of this. I didn't mean to get distracted that long. That's what the whole Get Trump movement began with, all this Russia stuff. But there has been a subtle change in focus. And the reason is that there's nothing there. After almost a year now of lies from the deep state and leaks that were treated as gospel by the drive-by media, they've got nothing. So they're subtly switching now. And the direction they're now taking at the establishment is to make Trump look like he's lost his faculties. See, Russia isn't trending anymore. Russia, it isn't working. Russia has lost its impetus. As our buddy Mark Stein says, there aren't even any Russians in the Russian investigation. They can't find any Russians that anybody can find who colluded with anybody other than the ambassador who had lunch every day with everybody. But beyond that, there aren't any Russians. So the Russia thing turns out to be a bust, and there are elements of it starting to backfire on Comey and others now with that Hillary investigation, finding that he basically, before he even interviewed her, declared his determination in the case and her innocence. The Russia thing is blowing up in front of their faces. It's losing its impetus, and it's lost the cachet it once had with even the never-Trumpers, because nothing's come of it. So they have moved directions to Trump is nuts. Trump is unhinged. Trump is insane. Shows up now in every commentary. It shows up in every talking point. It shows up in every story. It's all day, just like the Russia stuff was. It's all day on PMSNBC, and it's all day on CNN. And yet, whenever Trump appears in public, which he has done regularly and routinely and often this week, he doesn't appear to be unhinged. He doesn't appear to be disturbed, bothered, upset. He doesn't appear to be deranged. He doesn't appear to be he exhibits none of the characteristics that the drive-by media says with their associates, like Democrat congresswomen and so forth, who are making these claims, but there's no evidence. When Trump appears in public, he doesn't look isolated, like they say. I mean, they paint a picture of Trump walking the hallways of the White House under cover of darkness, speaking to portraits of all the former presidents, asking them how they got through it. None of this is happening. The picture they want you to believe. Millions of people do not think Trump is nuts, unhinged, insane, losing it, or anything of the sort. Millions of people believe just the opposite, in fact, that it's the other people that are coming unglued, that it's the establishment, that it's the Democrats, that it's a drive-bys, that it is their sources and acolytes. They're the ones coming unhinged, and they've been unhinged for a while. They're the ones who are unglued. They're the ones who have, obviously, they're very disturbed. They cannot believe, still to this day, what has happened. And what they really can't believe is that they haven't been able to do anything about it. They've fired every weapon they've got with every bit of ammo they've got, and nothing is getting rid of Trump, and nothing is really, derailing the Trump agenda other than some recalcitrant Republicans. But even the Trump agenda is moving forward. You've seen the unemployment numbers, folks? The fewest jobless claims since 1973. Those of you who were adults or teenagers in 1973, what car were you driving? You remember? Did you have a car in 1973? Not going to admit your age. Did you have a car in 1973? Did you? Remember what it was? Can't hear you, but you remember what it is. Okay. I remember what my car was in 1973. I had no business buying it, but I bought it. But it's a good test. That's how far or long ago this was. 1973. This is the fewest number of jobs claims since 1973. And the headline here, this is from Bloomberg News, and they're not happy about it. Fewest jobless claims since 73 show firm U.S. job market. Filing for unemployment benefits plunged last week at the lowest level since 1973 as workers affected by Hurricanes Harvey and Irma continued to return to their jobs. How's that possible? Because those hurricanes are supposed to have wiped out everything for 10 years because Trump and FEMA didn't get there to help anybody put it all back together. Remember that? And people are already going back to their jobs, which were lost for 10 years. Jobless claims decreased by 22,000 to 222,000. The estimate was 240, so the usual shocked and surprised economists is part of the story. Lowest since March of 1973. The period included Columbus Day holiday, giving one less day to file claims. The continuing claims fell by 16,000 to 1.89 million. Key takeaways, according to Bloomberg, the larger than projected decrease in claims probably reflected difficulty adjusting for Columbus Day holiday. Oh, that's one holiday gave them a problem here in figuring all of this out. At the same time, the report showed further declines in claims in hurricane-affected states. The storms initially led to a spike in applications in Texas and the southeastern U.S. in late August and early September. Remember when we had unemployment numbers that were released during the Obama administration, and they were quietly revised upward later on? We haven't had news like this. The economic sentiment that people feel, the optimism that's out there, and the economic growth that's taken. We got economic growth happening at percentage rates that we never saw, maybe 1/4 in 7 years or 8 years with Obama. Now, the point about this is that the circumstances people encountered living their lives are on the uptick. They are improving. And there is talk of tax cuts, tax reform. There's talk of not giving up on repealing, replacing Obamacare. And so when you take a day off and you look at all of this, and all I did was absorb it without having any no outlet to comment on it. It is obvious who's coming unglued here, and it's obvious who's losing their cookies, and it's obvious who's becoming unhinged. The Democrats. They're very keen. Mental instability is the only chance they have to remove remove Trump. Now, the 25th Amendment, yeah. I think what's happening, every time Trump goes out, gives an interview, talks to the media, he proves that he's anything but insane. He proves he's not unhinged. He gives living evidence that the allegations about him are BS. Then when you factor in the possibility that the Republicans in the Senate are going to go along with him and get some stuff passed, such as tax reform, giving him some cover, if they get this tax reform done before the end of the year, the economy explodes. Like I've said, if they just work with Trump for 3 months, just even make it, if they don't even mean it, just make it look like there is unity to advance that agenda. Could nail the Democrats in the minority for a generation, for 25 years. You remember Trump's little impromptu presser with McConnell? Did that look unhinged? It looked like a guy who likes very much what he's doing. So we're off of Russia, and we're now on to Trump is insane, Trump is unfit, which is what Hillary started with, if you recall. That was what her original campaign thing was. Elect me because this guy's unfit. You see what he said at the Access? Never mind Harvey Weinstein. We'll deal with that. Harvey's my buddy, and he raised a lot of money. We like Harvey. Did you see what Trump said on Access Hollywood? And now Linda Bloodworth Thomas, who I know, who I've actually worked with, has now come out and written on this. The Democrats are having to circle the wagons in ways in which they have been hoping and praying Trump would have to. Let me take a break. We will continue much more straight ahead right after this. Don't go. And we're back. El Rushbo on the cutting edge of societal evolution. Okay, so we have the Bloomberg story, fewest jobless claims since 1973 show firm U.S. job market. And here is a companion story. NBC amazed by stock surge despite chaos in Washington. Hey, NBC, you're not supposed to be amazed by it. You're just supposed to report it. But they can't do that because they are invested in it. Because NBC is helping to create the chaos. NBC is part of the cabal trying to undermine any of the good that might come out of the Trump administration. While covering the stock market milestone of the Dow surging past 23,000 on Tuesday, the cast of the Today Show seems surprised that the economy could be doing so well despite all the chaos in Washington being created by Trump. The co-host Matt Lauer said, "Who's driving it?" He said at the top of the segment, "Who's driving the stock market race?" Do you ever ask this question when it was going up under Obama? I mean, back then, they're praising Obama for this. They're praising the Federal Reserve. They're praising anybody and everybody they can find in government in order to credit stock market going up. But now that it's continuing to go up and reaching records, it can't be the government because they aren't in charge of it now. Trump is, so it can't be that. So who's driving? And, of course, it can't be the American people because you people are a bunch of dunderhead idiots. So they can't figure out, with all the chaos they have created in Washington, they're trying to create chaos in your life, but you are probably doing a good job of withstanding it. They can't figure out how anything is functioning given the chaos they have created. They're not saying they created the chaos. I am. Let's see. It was the NBC infobabe Stephanie Ruhle, who used to work at CNBC, also said, "Listen, it's a big positive. The economy's humming along. It's about corporate earnings. Corporate America's doing well. Interest rates are low. Trump has a pro-business agenda." Matt Lauer couldn't think of that. And nobody else in the cast, as they say, of the Today Show could. But after that brief note, after that one brief reference of credit, Savannah Guthrie, so often we see what happens in Washington, what happens with politics directly affects the market. So if the market's strong, does that mean the economy likes Trump? She asked it in panic. Does that mean the economy? When's the last time you interviewed the economy? I have never interviewed the economy. So I don't know whether the economy likes Trump or not. You got to talk to the people who make the economy hum, Ms. Guthrie. Okay, so the economy is doing well. I'm not going to say it's roaring. And the economy is it's geographical. There are parts it's doing well. There are parts it's not doing well. When some parts of the economy are booming, by definition, some are going to hurt. Look, oil price, for example, old example. Oil price fell, great for consumers, bad for the producers. So good economic news for the consumer. That's generally what we want. Washington's not crazy about that. Washington looks for other definitions. The establishment, the swamp, looks for other definitions. So NBC is sitting here, and they don't understand this. Folks, put yourselves in their shoes. For a year, they've had Donald Trump in the crosshairs. For a year, they have launched everything they've got. And in their minds, they think they're succeeding. Even though Trump's still there, they think they look at Trump's approval numbers in the 30s and 40s, and they think it's working because that's how they judge everything, is polling data. They believe their own polls, which told them Hillary was going to win in a landslide. So they believe all these things. They believe they're succeeding. They create these narratives that Trump's deranged, insane, lunatic, losing his mind. Have you seen the late? Here it was again. I'm reading show prep today, and there's some asinine story that Trump has a stand-in for Melania. That Melania hates Trump, hates what he's doing, so Trump's had to go get somebody that looks like Melania to accompany him. And you know the source for it? Twitter. Social media is saying, and a conspiracy is born. When did Twitter become a source? Well, we know when it became a source authority. So some lunatic on Twitter claims that Trump's got a model that looks like, but they're picking apart her appearance. It's not really her because the sunglasses are so big. And the skin tone's not the same, so they're convinced that Trump is having marital problems and had to go ahead and find a stand-in, a body double for Melania. And the source authority for this is Twitter, and it's in the mainstream media. So anyway, they believe all this stuff. And for a year, they think they have been destroying Trump, and then the economy doing well in the chaos that they've created just doesn't compute, which renders them speechless or asking themselves questions. Gee, what's causing this, asks Matt Lauer. And Savannah Guthrie with her question about the economy. Does it mean the economy likes President Trump? So all of these inanimate things that are literally made, who makes the economy is the people who make this country work. And they're not, for the most part, inside the Beltway. Now, is Ed in Canton ready to go, or no? You've moved the green line to somewhere else. So let's go. Okay, well, let me go to Ed in Canton since it works with what I'm talking about. Ed, great to have you. I'm glad you called, sir. Welcome to EIB Network.
Hey, Rush, it's a true honor to speak with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, sir. Hey, I just wanted to touch base. I'm in sales, and I work here in the Rust Belt in Ohio, on the ground virtually every day, cover a lot of miles. And I commented to my wife a week or two ago that there's just an unbelievable amount of help wanted signs everywhere. Factories, milk processing plants, gas stations. I don't care where it is. Everywhere you look. And I keep hearing stories of people looking to hire, and they can't find enough people. And here, this is blue-collar country. This is agriculture. This is steel mills. This is pipelines going through. And you're seeing a huge upsurge, and we can't find enough people to work. It's crazy.
Now, you know what? You have just stumbled into something that is a relevant aspect of this economic activity that's taking place out there. You mentioned pipelines. You mentioned steel mills. And by the way, that's anecdotal evidence. He's in sales. He's driving around. He's seeing all these help wanted signs in Ohio. These are the kind of signs that were ignored during the campaign. Signs that there was a lot of support for Trump, they were ignored, and they're going to be ignored here because this goes against what ought to be happening, and what ought to be happening is what's treated as is happening. Why do you think, what do you think if you had to pick one thing, what is it that is driving economic activity? I've maintained to you that so much of our current economic power is due to the fact that we are no longer paying through the nose for energy. Look at the gasoline price and how it has plunged. Despite the Democrats and Obama's best efforts by advocating for climate change and by advocating for carbon taxes and wanting to increase the cost of energy so that you would use less of it so that we could save the planet. Instead, energy prices are plummeting, and that means a considerable amount in terms of people's disposable income, because in most energy use, it's necessary. You have to drive to work. You have to drive things to restock your home. You have to drive places. It's not optional. And when the cost of doing that declines significantly, you have to drive to work. When all of the costs of these things decline significantly, it adds up to more disposable income for people. And then it reduces the cost of things. When transportation costs are reduced because energy costs are reduced. This is called trickle-down, by the way, folks. This is how trickle-down works. When energy costs less overall, it costs less for everybody who uses it, which means you get more out of it. And I think there are probably a lot of other reasons, factors here too, but it's I think one of the primary drivers. And how many of you, I asked you a moment ago, those of you who are old enough, what kind of car were you driving in 73? If you remembered, do you also remember the long lines at gas stations? Do you remember the panic? Every time your gas gauge went below 50% or half. Do you remember the cost? Back then, I mean, in the late 60s, gasoline wars started at 25 cents a gallon. By 1973, they were up to 75 cents. That percentage increase, a threefold increase in the cost of a gallon of gas, had more to do with changing lifestyles than anything else at the time. And then OPEC came along and contrived this shortage so that the supply was limited, raising the price and panic. And then Jimmy Carter came along and said, well, you know, we got this energy crisis. You need to start wearing sweaters, keep the thermostat at 68 and so forth. General melees. If you remember what kind of car you're driving in 73, you remember that. Now look at the contrast. Energy prices, we've got more people using energy than we've ever had, certainly more than we had in 1973. What were we told in 1973? We have reached that moment where we have a finite amount of fossil fuel. We have only enough fossil fuel, raw crude oil to last us X number of years. Panic set in. Now here we are, something like 35 years, 40 years later, and we have abundance in oil, in crude, because of new technology to extract it. We are swimming in natural gas. We have more cheap energy than anybody, any expert ever predicted back in those days in 1973. And it matters to overall economic activity and people's attitudes about the economy. So I'm telling you, in this atmosphere, in this market, if you tack on tax cuts to this and add even more disposable income to people, and if the Republicans are seen as getting credit for this, then the Democrats are buried, and they can keep trying to create all the chaos they want. With the drive-by media, it isn't going to matter. Two other quick stories for the break. This one relates. Hill.com, Politico Morning Consult poll. We've been citing Morning Consult a lot lately, and one of the reasons why is that they're fairly accurate. Almost half of America think the media just make it up about Trump. Nearly half of voters surveyed in a new poll think the media make up stories about Trump and his administration. The actual number is 46% think the media fabricate reports about Trump, not just Trump, the whole administration. 37% do not think so, and 17% don't know yet. They're still trying to figure it out. But let's add the 17 to the 46, because the 17 are not disagreeing. They're saying they haven't figured out. So that would put it 63% of the American people either think the media is making it up or haven't figured it out yet. 76% of Republicans think so. 20% of Democrats believe the media is making up stories, but they still support it. Most of them on the Upper West Side. And 65% of Democrats disagree. A majority of voters, 51%, disagree that the government should have the power to take away broadcast licenses. This is one of these things that the left is never going to get. So Trump says in a tweet or whatever that he thinks these licenses for these networks ought to be rescinded. Now, I'm here to tell you that Donald Trump is not an idiot, and he knows nothing like that is ever going to happen. This is called, you got a pile of excrement there, and he wants to stir it up. So he throws that tweet out there, just stirring it up, because he can play these people. He knows how they're going to react to it. They take him literally because they believe he's an idiot and doesn't know anything. And then they launch with these stories. Trump is an idiot. Trump doesn't even know that networks aren't licensed. This man is unfit. 25th Amendment, which is what they're off to now. The drive-bys had a meltdown over that Trump wanted to take away their license. They still don't know when he's tweaking them. And finally this, and I say finally before we go to the break, this just cleared the EIB news wires. The director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, the acting director, Tom Homan, confirmed today that a man arrested in connection with setting a fire, that would be arson for those of you in Rio Linda, in Sonoma County wine country is, wait for it, an illegal alien from Mexico who has been twice returned to his home country. For those of you in Rio Linda, that's deported, and he came back. Holman also confirmed that ICE has issued detainer requests for Jesus Gonzalez 5 times now in the past year, including the one issued October 16th in relation to his most recent arrest on suspicion of arson. All the arrests were made by Sonoma County on various felony and misdemeanor charges. Sonoma County is a sanctuary jurisdiction and does not fully cooperate with federal immigration officials. So, a wanted illegal immigrant living the life in a sanctuary state sets a fire in Sonoma County that does great damage to wine country. And I'm not going to say anything else. I don't have to. UK Daily Mail is reporting that George W. Bush made a speech today at the George W. Institute in New York. Well, it's actually in Texas, but I guess they had a satellite meeting in New York. And the Daily Mail is saying that George W. Bush took some pretty hard swipes at Donald Trump on immigration and on race. We happen to have 3 audio sound bites from this speech, and we'll get to them as soon as we get back here from the top of the hour break, and you decide what you think is going on. Sit tight, folks. Back before you know it. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Rush Limbaugh on the left coast. Just for the day, behind a traveling Golding EIB microphone at 800-282-2882. If you want to send an email, I check them during the break. lrushbo at eibnet.us. Yeah, I saw it. I watched the Goodell press conference yesterday after the 2 owners' meetings. There were 2 meetings. It was Goodell met with some of the owners and the players, and then there was the full-fledged owners' meeting after that. And Goodell came out, and it is, I don't know. I really don't know if the NFL and other corporations. I'm undecided. I don't know if they really don't know who their audience is, or if they do know and are not particularly crazy about who the audience is. And don't laugh at that. I mean, there are a lot of corporate entities who they want to be viewed as hip by virtue of who their customers are, users, or what have you. But this, I mean, everybody's done this, although we were first with the premise and with the idea to create these montages to illustrate the repetitiveness of people or the similarity in speech patterns from person to person in drive-by media. But Goodell kept it was like he was on a loop talking about our issues and our communities. And it went on and on and on and on. It's all he was talking about, coming together on our issues and on our communities. And I'm thinking, this is not what the NFL is all about. So I asked for the montage. Even a cookie said, I didn't give it to you today because everybody's already done it. I said, I haven't. And we invented it here way, way, way back years ago. So I've got this ready to go. But I just, this is so far off the mark in how to deal with the problem they've got that I'm really wondering if they get it. We just assume they do because they're paid gazillions of dollars and they're CEOs, and these organizations, companies can find the best and the brightest people in the world if they want to, so we assume that they think they do. And it just doesn't make any sense to us. It doesn't make any sense to me that they would be led by people that don't really know who their audience is. But then, if they're a bunch of liberals, then by definition, their whole belief system has been corrupted and skewed. So I'm holding out the possibility these people don't get it. Their numbers are continuing to decline. And by the way, not just the overall league numbers, but in the local markets as well. Local television, well, that would follow, but it hasn't been reported as such. They've been reporting football ratings nationally. But it would have to be true that the numbers are down market by market as well. And I'm telling you, this is, outside of strike years, this is unprecedented. The NFL hasn't, for the longest time, had to face anything like this. In fact, the NFL's popularity is so given that I think that there isn't a whole lot of worry or concern about 10 years, 5 years down the road. I think their attitude is, what else? When it comes to network money sustains the NFL, for example. And I think they probably believe that money is always going to be there, because what else is there to televise on Sunday afternoon? In the fall and winter, what else is there to televise on Sunday night? Well, there actually is a lot to televise on Sunday night. Monday night as well, but primarily Sunday afternoon and on holidays, traditions. I just wonder if they've really gotten to the point where they take sold-out stadiums for granted. In New York, the Giants and Jets have 20-year waiting lists. They don't anymore, but they did. So you wonder how much of it they take it for granted, because I'm watching these guys say what they're saying and reacting to their problem, and it's one of two things. Either they just so consumed with hate for Trump for hijacking their season, when in fact it hasn't Trump that hijacked their season. Their players hijacked the national anthem. The players have hijacked the flag. Their players. I saw Michael Bennett, who is a offensive lineman for the Seahawks. His brother, I think, is a tight end for the Packers. His brother's Martellus Bennett. Michael Bennett's the guy that was involved in the Las Vegas shooting over the summer, where he claims that the cops mistreated him because he's African American. I keep reminding myself as I get off to tangents, but don't worry. I always zero back. They have a problem, kind of like faux celebrities do. Have you heard of people who get pulled off over by the cop? You know who I am. The cops have no idea, but in their minds, everybody ought to know who they are because they were a guest star on Wheel of Fortune 10 years. You know who I am. And that's relied on by a lot of people, and oftentimes the cops don't. Same thing in Hollywood, same thing with all kinds of stardom, expecting special treatment, deferential treatment. Anyway, Michael Bennett said He just put it right out there. He said the fastest way to end these protests is for a team to hire Kaepernick. Bingo! Inadvertently swerving into what this is all about. Just hire Kaepernick. He said if some team would hire Kaepernick, that'd be the greatest thing you people could do to get us to start standing up for the anthem again. So it'll probably happen. Mark my words, it'll happen. And it'll be a mistake when it does happen. It'll whatever team does this is going to be in for heat. Unless the Seahawks might be able to get away with it. But they would have to have Russell Wilson get hurt before they would pick him up. They don't want that to happen. Anyway, we have the audio of Goodell and our communities and our issues. It's just not how people talk. It's how liberals talk, and it's how they're taught to speak in college campus, but our communities. What communities? The NFL players have players that play for the National Football League. That's their community. But that's not the kind of community Goodell is talking about. They've got it in their heads now that the NFL is one of the warriors for social justice. And because they think that's what its audience wants, which is why I ask if they even know who their crowd, who their fans of the audience is. Okay, George W. Bush did not say much of anything for the 8 years of the regime of Barack Hussein. He didn't write a letter. He often said, hey, I had my 8 years, not going to comment on my successor. It's not the way we former presidents do things. Unless you're Bill Clinton or Al Gore, then you do. But George W. Bush never did. I don't think Bush had anything to say about Clinton when he took over 2000, and I don't think he had a thing to say while Obama was unwinding his agenda. And this, again, is something I don't understand. If it were me, I just put myself in these guys' shoes. If I were me and I ever ran for office, it would not be because I want to live in the White House, want fame, want power. It would be because I am obsessed with advancing my agenda and building America or reforming it to be what it should be, and I thought that I could get elected. And if I did get elected, and if I had any kind of success at all, I don't know how I would just be able to sit by silently and watch somebody lie about it and unravel it. But that's the rule, and that's what ex-presidents do. And now Obama is perceived as doing that, but he really isn't. Obama is guiding. Obama is instrumental in all of these efforts to undermine Trump. He's just not seen. He doesn't do it personally. He doesn't go on television personally and do it. Surrogates. Many of his surrogates are still deeply embedded in the bureaucracy known as the deep state. And Eric Holder and all these other Holder, they're still out there, and they're doing everything they can to undermine what Trump wants to do. But George W. Bush never did. Never any of that. But all of a sudden, George W. Bush feels compelled to speak out. So we have 3 sound bites from New York City this morning, a conference hosted by the George W. Bush Institute. It's an adjunct of the George W. Bush Presidential Library, which is on the campus at SMU. And we have 3 bites. Here is the first of 3.
Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates into dehumanization. We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism. We've forgotten the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America.
Well, okay, the dynamism that immigration has brought to America. I have a stat. I saw this the other day, and it's one of these things I knew, but I didn't know. I said, it shocked me, but then when I stopped and thought about it, it had to be true. The U.S. immigrant population has hit a record 43.7 million in 2016. 1 out of 5, 5.5, 1 out of 5.5 Americans is an immigrant, legal and illegal combined. 1 out of 5. That's not dynamism. That is an invasion that has been ignored, and you might even say covered up. And it is a trend that a majority of Americans oppose, and that's why Donald Trump was elected. But that's not it. George W. Bush says bigotry seems emboldened. Too much bigotry out there. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories. Only on Twitter. And outright fabrication. Well, that's a drive-by media, Mr. President. They're the ones making stuff up. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. I know that all of this stuff is aimed at Trump, but in truth, you can lay all of this at the feet of the Democrat Party, the American left, the media. At times, it could seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. That's not, what's happening here is there was a phony, false, plastic banana, good time rock and roller effort to force people together. Not create unity, but to force people together by punishing certain elements of our society and labeling them and criticizing them and claiming they had to take one for the team. There's a way you go about promoting unity, but that's not what this has been. This has been a forced, you will accept this and you will like this, or else. And all of that happened against the will of the American people. When they couldn't get the votes for doing this, they found other ways of changing immigration law or largely not enforcing it. We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism. So George W. Bush he's calling out Trump voters here. And Trump. Here's the next bite. There are 2 more to go.
America has experienced a sustained attempt by a hostile power to feed and exploit our country's divisions. According to our intelligence services, the Russian government has made a project of turning Americans against each other. This effort is broad, systemic, and stealthy. It's conducted across a range of social media platforms.
Holy smokes. Are you kidding me? The Russians have infiltrated our politics. Russians have been trying to infiltrate, and they've succeeded, college campuses for decades. But America has experienced a sustained attempt by a hostile power, that's Russia, to feed and exploit our country's divisions. It's conducted across a range of social media platforms. Mark Penn, who is the pollster for Hillary Clinton, but the guy seems embarrassed to be in any way associated. You see what he said the other day? The latest contra, the Russians, see all the ads the Russians bought on Facebook. The Russians are polluting people's minds. The Russians, Zuckerberg didn't know what happened. Zuckerberg got zucked. Zuckerberg got screwed. The Russians. Mark Penn said, wait a minute. They bought $100,000 worth of ads. Nobody is elected president after a $100,000 ad buy. But who turned social media into something that's so relevant rather than what it is? Social media has become a source authority for the drive-by media, and so they're very interested in what happens there. And here is, we got time for the third bite. This is it.
Our identity as a nation, unlike many other nations, is not determined by geography or ethnicity, by soil or blood. Being an American involves the embrace of high ideals and civic responsibility. We become the heirs of Thomas Jefferson by accepting the ideal of human dignity found in the Declaration of Independence. We become the heirs of James Madison by understanding the genius and values of the U.S. Constitution. We become the heirs of Martin Luther King Jr. by recognizing one another not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This means that people of every race, religion, ethnicity can be fully and equally American. It means that bigotry or white supremacy in any form is blasphemy against the American creed.
I don't know. What is this, the George W. Bush version of Hillary's deplorables? I don't know. You tell me. We'll be back after this, folks. Don't go away. Welcome back, folks, and we return to the phones. Tom in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Rush. I wanted to talk to you about the way the media is weaponized against Trump. The story about the football league and how they've reacted. Trump was winning with his narrative about it was unpatriotic. It wasn't the time to do it when the national anthem was played. So they had to figure out a way to make him look disrespectful. And that's what this whole thing about this woman reporter was saying. Did you call all those war heroes that were killed and talk to their widows? I think this was set up. I'm not no conspiracy buff, but when you have a congresswoman who just happens to be in the car listening, and then makes a narrative out of it. Let me interrupt you here, George, just a second, Tom. I wondered the same thing myself. I remembered back when a grandfather and grandmother were driving along looking for Christmas presents for their grandkids, and they had a cell phone monitoring radio in their Cadillac. Back in the early 90s, and it was just they were able to monitor the cell phone calls of Newt Gingrich. You know, just practicing citizenship here. Like everybody has a cell phone scanner in their Cadillac. And then what they heard Newt talking to John Boehner about strategy. They said, well, we're witnessing real democracy. So they sent it off to the New York Times, and the New York Times reported on it. And, you know, when I saw that the congresswoman was in the car and all this, you know, the first thing I think when these people are involved is set up. And your point, if I understand it, your point is, look at what the players are out there being accused of being anti-military, anti-this. So what do? Try to turn it around so that it looks like Trump is anti-military and doesn't care. Is that your point? Yes, it is. Because he's very strong with the military, and they know it, and they're trying to weaken him in this point by saying he disrespected this dead soldier's widow.
Yeah, from everything I've seen, it looks like that congresswoman has modified her story a little. Well, I didn't hear the whole conversation because there have been steadfast denials coming out of the White House on this. But, you know, experience guided by intelligence and vice versa. I mean, this is what people on the left do. They try to set things up and all that. And if anybody gets in cahoots, anti-military, it's those people. Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. El Rushbaugh on the left coast. Okay, here's the latest on this kerfuffle with the Trump phone call. Trump says that the congresswoman fabricated comments to the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. Trump said yesterday morning on Twitter that he never told the widow that the soldier, quote, knew what he signed up for, but when it happens, it hurts anyway. Democrat Congresswoman totally fabricated what I said to the wife of a soldier who died in action, and Trump said, I have proof. And they finished with the word sad. Now, we're talking here about U.S. Representative Frederica Wilson, Democrat. She told reporters that Trump made the insensitive remark while speaking to Johnson's widow during a phone conversation. She fired back at Trump, telling CNN that she had proof, too. This man is a sick man, she said. He's cold-hearted and he feels no pity or sympathy for anybody. The conversation between Trump and Maisha Johnson took place Tuesday before the soldier's body arrived at Miami International Airport. When she actually hung up the phone, she looked at me and said he didn't even know his name, Wilson said. Now, that's the worst part. Now, I'm sorry, folks. I don't believe that. I don't believe when they set these calls up for the president to make that he doesn't have the name of the killed in action hero and the family right in front of him. I just don't believe this. That would have been written out. That would have put before the president, before any such call. And by the way, this Congresswoman, Ms. Wilson, she didn't even know the name of the mother she claims to be so close to. She kept mispronouncing the name. In her tweet where she claimed Trump didn't know the mother's name, she called her Maisha, where it's actually Maisha. Trump affirmed his position when speaking with reporters later on Wednesday. Then there's a companion story here. Florida Democrat who criticized Trump for disrespecting soldier's widow has terrible record helping vets. It turns out the Florida Democrat who criticized Trump for making insensitive remarks toward the widow of a fallen soldier doesn't exactly have a great track record herself when it comes to helping veterans. Her name is Frederica Wilson, obviously. She has repeatedly voted against bills that help veterans and their families, according to votesmart.org. Now, if somebody on the Republican side similarly adorned with a sequin-encrusted cowboy hat and matching flower had started making up drivel about Obama, the left would have had a meltdown over that. Had anybody, cowboy hat or not, sequin encrusted or not, flower in it or not, if they had started making up stuff about Obama, the media, the left would have had a meltdown and set out to destroy that person. But now that the Congresswoman is a Democrat, who's no friend of the military anyway, but it's all part of this ongoing effort to try to tell you, to convince you that Trump is just so coarse. He's just such a pig. He's so insensitive. He doesn't care about people. And I think our caller had a good point. What are these NFL protests all about? Showing disrespect to the flag and the anthem. And so here's a bit of a reversal to try to say that, hey, look, Trump's a big hypocrite. Here he is standing up for the flag and the anthem and making a big deal about these players. Yeah, and he doesn't even respect individual soldiers who are dead, who die in action. And by the way, this is one of the soldiers killed in action in Niger. And he was there because of Obama, lest anybody think this is a Trump deployment about which Trump doesn't care. This was an Obama mission. Let's head back to the phones. This is Jeff in Colorado Springs. I'm glad you called, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, huge dittos from a glorious day in Colorado Springs, Rush. Absolutely great to be talking to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you much.
Yes, sir. I'd like to go over 2 points real quickly and get your analysis. The President Bush commentary really bothers me. So I really wanted to call in and find out your thoughts on this. One of two things. Is this payback for Jeb? And as soon as I say that, it seems like that's just too shallow to be true, but there seems to be an element there. Or is this what you said before? The establishment, which fights under no flag, neither Republican nor Democrat, the establishment fights under their own flag, and no one like him is going to come in and take this away from us. Is that what this is about? And now President Bush is wholesale bought into that? And that was the attack today. It's just something on my mind. I really value your analysis on that.
Of the two options that you present, I would tend to think that your second option is the more accurate of the two. But let me ask you a question about this.
Please.
In the form of asking you and asking everybody, do you remember the 8 years of George W. Bush where he was routinely aligned and impugned and insulted? He was called a liar. He was called a dunce. He was called a cowboy. He was called an idiot.
Yeah.
that Bush lied, people died. Bush, Hitler. There were books and movies made which were applauded on how to assassinate George W. Bush, and a movie in Canada that actually portrayed that incident, Bush being assassinated. And the media said that all of these books and movies had artistic value that we should study and learn from because they explain the ongoing rage. And then in particularly the second term of Bush, the final 4 years, do you remember the ongoing effort of the combined media Democrat Party to actually destroy the Bush war effort in Iraq and to secure defeat? You remember all that?
Absolutely.
Do you think Bush does?
I do, and that's my query. Why now does it seem like he's being embraced by that same conglomeration that tried to destroy him? Because now he has an anti-Trump message. So let's embrace this guy. To me, that is the definition of establishment.
Wait a minute. Who's embracing who? Which went first?
The media. When I heard the spin up about
hang on a minute. Hang on. Our phone system is such that when I'm speaking, you can't hear me. So that's why I have to keep talking to interrupt you and catch you when you take a breath. I'm sorry for that, but
no worries.
My question: which came first? Did Bush embrace the establishment by making the speech, or is he now being embraced by the establishment because he made the speech? Which happened first?
Yes, the latter. I believe the latter, but it's a courtship. It's a dance. And over the last few years, you've seen less and less anti-Bush rhetoric, and therefore perhaps a door open for him to now come in with that maybe crack in the door or even fully open and go and do a speech like we saw today. I'm confused. I don't know. It caught me off guard, but it was the spin-up of this speech in the media that really caught my attention. Oh, he's going to talk about this, and he's going to talk about that. And then when he comes out and talks, and it's basically anti-Trump, I felt snookered. But it now matches the pattern of how the media does that. So I think it's been a courtship. I think the establishment flag that encompasses both camps of Republican and Democrat are embracing anyone they can, to include the former president, to go after Bush and destroy him, because
I still go back to my question to you, because I'm not sure you're right. I'm not sure that the first thing that happened here was the media embracing Bush. I think the first thing that happened is Bush makes a speech. Then you ask, okay, who wrote that speech? Well, one of his big speechwriters, one of his most acclaimed speechwriters, in particular his first term, was Michael Gerson, who is one of the de facto leaders of the Never Trump movement of the so-called Washington conservatives. And he now writes columns for the Washington Post in which he routinely savages Trump and pro-Trumpers and so forth. Did Gerson write this speech, or did some other Never-Trumper write the speech? But the point is, Bush gave it. You can say what the media is doing and react, but Bush gave the speech. So you think that Bush, by giving the speech, is trying to get back in the good graces of the crowd that savaged him and ridiculed him and destroyed him?
I don't know, and that's why I called in. I needed your thoughts on that, because it is so confusing to me that happened today. I'm still trying to assimilate it and process this.
Well, I'll just give you a shortcut here. I don't think that's what George W. Bush is doing, because I don't think Bush needs to be ingratiated in the club. He's always been in it. And what happened to him is what Republicans in the club acknowledge is going to happen if they're in the club and if they're Republicans. I saw so many things. Russ Feingold was one of the most vicious, senator from Wisconsin, one of the most vicious, mean-spirited, extremist critics of George W. Bush I can remember. And the cameras were outside, where they were outside the House chamber after a State of the Union speech. And there was Feingold sucking up to Bush and asking to pose for photos and asking for autographs. And this guy was literally trying to destroy Bush in public. And Bush put his arm around him and slapped him on, and they looked like best of friends. And it didn't make any sense to me, just in the sense of human nature, unless everybody acknowledges that both guys are doing what you do when you're in that club, and both people are playing their roles, and there's a mutual respect just for being in the club. It didn't make any sense to me. As I say, Bush didn't say anything for 8 years of Obama, and now comes out and doesn't just hit Trump. He never mentioned Trump's name, but we must remind you, didn't mention Trump's name. But in the process, the things he said were pretty critical of the American people, too. White supremacy, there's no white supremacy. White supremacists couldn't fill a phone booth in this country. There aren't enough of them to affect the outcome of anything, and yet they become a central element of a major speech by a former president. Well, now, who's created that myth? Well, that's right out of the swamp. It's right out of whoever's running media, Democrat Party, what have you. Look, I have to take a break. I'm a little long, but I'm glad you called. I hope that the analysis here got you halfway home, and you can finish it up yourself. But there's no real way of knowing. Time will tell. Now, I don't have time to be fair with another call, and as I look at the call roster, there's nobody there I want to be unfair with. If there were, I would take the call and say, you got 30 seconds, make it count. So I do have a bit of information here that I can squeeze in this time. In the headline, Trump administration trying to protect an immigrant baby. A leftist judge has ordered the baby killed. An Obama-appointed judge has ordered that an illegal immigrant currently in federal custody for being illegal, 15 weeks pregnant, 3.5 months, must be allowed to have an abortion in the U.S. She has constitutional rights. Even though she doesn't, she's not a citizen. The Trump administration is trying to protect the baby of an illegal immigrant. Now, what is this about Trump not caring about immigrants? What is it about Trump being a racist pig or whatever he is? Just isn't so. The hateful, racist Trump administration is trying to preserve and protect the life of an illegal immigrant baby. Little tech news here. The Chicoms have just told Apple they cannot sell the LTE version of the Apple Watch in China. You know why? Because the Chicoms are admitting they will not be able to keep track and follow citizens who wear one of those. The tech media doesn't seem all that distressed about this, because if it's got the word government in it, it may as well be a god. Back in a second. It is the fastest 3 hours in media. Here we are, starting the third hour already of the EIB Network and Rush Limbaugh. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day while serving humanity at the same time, simply by showing up. Okay, may have to do a correction here. And unlike the New York Times and other drive-by media outlets who bury their corrections and correct their mistakes, we herald them. Doesn't happen much, so it isn't that big a deal. Remember the story from earlier in the program, and it was a Breitbart story that said the director of immigration, the ICE director, was saying that the wine country arsonist is an illegal alien Mexican. Story read this way. U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement Acting Director Tom Homan confirmed Thursday that a man arrested in connection with setting a fire in Sonoma County wine country is an illegal alien from Mexico who had twice been deported to his home country. Homan also confirmed, according to the Breitbart story, by the way, Homan confirmed that ICE has issued detainer requests for Jesus Gonzalez 5 times now in the past year alone. Well, the correction comes from the Sacramento Bee. The Sonoma sheriff Headline here, Sonoma sheriff shoots down right-wing reports linking arson suspect to wine country fires. The sheriff, I guess, here is named Giordano. He said there's a story out there that he's the arsonist in these fires, meaning the illegal immigrant. And the sheriff said that's not the case. There's no indication he's related to these fires at all. I wanted to kill that speculation right now so we didn't have things running too far out of control. Breitbart published stories on the Sunday arrest of Jesus Gonzalez, some sheriff's deputies arrested on a single count of arson. So we looked into this, and it is the only story on it, the one from Breitbart here. And as best I've been able to tell, and we've been able to tell, it doesn't link to an actual statement from Director Holman at ICE. So I'm just giving myself a warning here, folks, that this story could have been erroneously reported or mistakenly, whichever it is, and passed them. I generally have trust in Breitbart, but the story isn't anywhere else, and now there's a denial from the Sonoma County Sheriff in the Sacramento Bee claiming that it's not the case. So, in fact, I could have not mentioned this. And then tonight, the whole thing blown up, and I could have, yes, I did. I corrected it, and never did, and would demand that they prove that I didn't. But that's not the way we do things here. Okay, we move on now, folks, to the National Football League and the league meetings yesterday, which I think a lot of people had certain expectations that did not happen, that were not met. First off, the commissioner, Roger Goodell, at the owners' meetings, this is the press conference, started a little after 2 o'clock, I think, if I have my time zones correct. I was in the air watching this when it happened. And I think it was 2 o'clock Eastern time when it was Eastern time. I remember that now. We have 2 bites from Goodell, and then, well, actually 3 from Goodell, but this is the first one of the 3.
We believe everyone should stand for the national anthem. That's an important part of our policy. It's also an important part of our game that we all take great pride in. And it's also important for us to honor our flag and to our country. And we think our fans expect us to do that. And so that is something that we continue to focus on this morning, but really talking a lot about the opportunity that exists with our players to try to go and really make a difference in our communities in a positive way.
Well, there it was. That started the flood, if you will, of making a difference in our communities in a positive way. You know, often get in trouble for this. But this phrase, and it's generally uttered by younger people who are trying to impress older people, particularly those who might hire them. Well, does that even happen? Do young people even try to impress older people anymore? Or are younger people telling older people how screwed up they are? Well, I've heard younger people say, either talking to themselves, and I want to make a difference. And people generally go, right on. Very good. You keep it up. And then I love throwing cold water on it by saying, well, you know, Hitler made a difference. You killjoy, you can't say that. He did. Hitler made a difference. You know, I'm the mayor of Realville. I'm a literalist. I want to make a difference. It's generally assumed that means you want to make the world a better place. You want to do this or that. But, you know, when it comes to platitudes, I kind of like putting up stop sign. But that's just me as the mayor of Realville. But here's the commissioner of the National Football League. We believe everybody should stand for the national anthem, but not enough to tell them to, is what he means. That's what it means. We believe everybody should stand for the anthem. It's an important part of our policy. It's an important part of our game. But we think our fans expect us to do that, something we continue to focus on, but it didn't come up in the meeting. It didn't come up at the meeting. You thought we were talking about the anthem today? We weren't talking about that. It didn't come up. The owners, we had to pick out the next Super Bowl where it was going to be. We had to assign the draft to Dallas. We think everybody should stand for the anthem. But we're not going to change the policy and say they have to. You know, there is a federal law that says you have to stand up for the anthem. And you know who found it? The judge, the Republican Senate candidate in Alabama they all hate, Roy Moore. So Roy Moore's out there doing what Roy Moore, well, you know, the law says that people got to stand for the anthem. So they just ran. This guy's such a bigot. He's such a hick. He's such a hasty. He didn't know what he's talking about. This is proof of his bigotry. They looked it up, and he was right. So then they said, nothing to see here. The law is stupid. It's not enforceable. It ain't a big deal. And instead of standing for the anthem, we are going to work with our players to go out there and really make a difference in our communities in a positive way. What does this mean? One of my ex-wives, a few times I talked to her. How you doing? I am the leader of trash collection in my community. She was very proud. That's the first time I was aware of the community type stuff. And now we got all kinds. We got the intelligence community. We have the military community. We have the journalist community. I mean, we got communities of everything now. And so now the NFL is going to be working really hard to make a difference in their communities in a positive way. Here's the next statement from the Commissioner, Roger Goodell.
One of the things we need to keep a focus on is, again, we believe that our players should stand for the national anthem. That's an important part of our game.
Stop the tape. I forgot to say the question. The question would matter here. You don't really need it. But he was asked a question here by a reporter. It's in the operations manual, Commissioner. The players should be on the field for the anthem. They should stand at attention, hold their helmets in their hand. It's not a rule, but it's a policy. So why not make it a rule? Since fans seem to want it, ratings seem to be down, why not make it a rule?
One of the things we need to keep a focus on is, again, we believe that our players should stand for the national anthem. That's an important part of our game and our moments, and we believe in that. We have about 6 or 7 players that are involved with this protest at this point. And This is something that what we try to do is deal with the underlying issue and understand what it is that they're protesting and try to address that matter. The important thing for us is to be able to do that and take that opportunity to make real differences in our community.
And there it was again. I got to go make a real differences in our community. What is this? 6 or 7 players involved with the protest? It's more like they've run the numbers out there. It's more like 200. Hell, there's 33 of them alone on the Foreigners. And you know what the 49ers are saying? Well, we were a week late getting started, so we have to have more protests to catch up with the rest of our brothers in the league. And the protest started on a Sunday after the 49ers had played on a Thursday. They missed out on the first round of protests, so now they're having to catch up on it. But they have... One was 33 of them alone, I think, kneeled out of a roster of 53, 6 or 7. Now, yesterday, before the meetings, Jerry Jones, there was a rumor out there that what was a sports drive-by media rumor, that Jerry Jones was going to take over the meeting because Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, had publicly said to his players, if you don't stand, you're not playing. If you take a knee and you don't stand for the anthem, you're not going to play. And so they blew up out there in the sports drive-bys and elsewhere at Jerry Jones and then accused him. And, well, they accused and asked, is Jerry Jones going to try to take over the meeting today? You know, he does that. Jerry Jones, he dominates these owners' meetings anyway. Is he going to come in here? Is he going to take over? Is he going to demand every one of these owners agree that the players don't play if they don't stand up? So, when Jerry Jones arrived at the NFL office, this is what happened.
You want to treat them like $40 million slaves, gladiators who are well paid to beat each other's brains out, but have to keep their mouths shut when talking about injustice. Look at the videos of the police getting away with murder and tell me that the players are wrong to protest it and that they have no rights to do that. People need to take a knee against white supremacy, and people need to stand up against you and your buddy Donald Trump and drive his whole regime out, and it begins November 4th.
That was in the lobby of the Conrad Hotel where the owners' meetings were taking place, and they were heckling Jerry Jones as he walked in. Now, it sounds like the protester had a microphone. Sounds like the protester had a PA system. Sounds like the protester hates Trump. Sounds like the protester thinks the cops are out there murdering people. But the protester believes hands up, don't shoot actually happened. $40 million slaves. So I asked earlier in the program, because I wrote a friend of mine who had offered an opinion on it, wrote back, and I'm beginning to ask myself, do these people really not know who their fans are, who their audience is, or do they know and it embarrasses them? Because, folks, everything this league is doing, everything they run out there and say, is only furthering the problem that they are having. Donald Trump didn't hijack anything. The players in the National Football League decided to hijack the national anthem. After one player, Colin Kaepernick, did it last season, and out of the blue, they all started doing it this year. Well, many of them started doing it this year, and many of them don't know what they're doing. Some think they're protesting Trump. Some think they're protesting police brutality. And the owners, as we've been over and over and over again here, the owners don't know what to do with this. They don't know what side of this to come down on. So to them, the safest route is to support the players. And it just makes me think that I think this is a storm that they think they're going to weather. And at some point in the future, all this is going to be forgotten. And they'll be on to some other controversy or some other thing they have to deal with. But eventually people are going to get tired of this. They're going to show back up. Once we get deeper in the season, the games start having a little bit more meaning. We get into playoffs. The fans are going to come back. TV ratings are going to come back. The TV money is never going to leave because what else is there for the networks to televise on Sunday afternoon but us? So the money's always going to be there. And I don't know what because this does not make sense to me. When the solution to this is so easy. What's the solution? Give them an opportunity to protest whatever. Do a police brutality month in the NFL if you want. Make them stand during the anthem. Anything like this they do, it's going to hurt. Because this is not why people watch football, and they don't want ideological corruption of the game. And yet that is what's happening. Now, we put together this montage of Goodell. We invented this technique, by the way, many, many moons ago. Everybody in the media copies it. But this one, and I asked Cookie, I said, where is it? I don't see it on the roster. She said, well, I didn't give it to you because everybody's doing it. I said, doesn't mean we don't. So she put it together. The whole thing's a minute 44. I'm not going to play this whole thing, but just to give you a flavor.
I'll tell you that our players are men of great character. They have a very deep understanding and tremendous knowledge of the issues that are going on in all of our communities. The players were very clear about how they felt about these issues and how deeply they felt about these issues in our communities. These aren't really issues that are player issues or owner issues or community issues. They're issues that affect all of us in our communities. We wanted to work together to try to address these issues. We spent today talking about the issues that our players have been trying to bring attention to about issues in our communities to make our communities better. There's nothing more important than trying to get back into our communities and make our communities better. The relationships between our clubs, our players, our communities, the relationship between the players and our communities and our law enforcement mission. These are important issues for our communities. They're American issues, and I think those are the key issues. I would tell you, though, just on one other issue, and really make a difference in our communities in a positive way, and to try to help and make differences in our community, deal with the underlying issue, differences in our community, because this is a long-term issue. That's why we're trying to deal with those underlying.
All right, stop the tape. Do you think that they focus grouped it? Did they focus group this? Did they take surveys? They take polls? Is communities a buzzword for certain demographics? Is communities how you, and then doing work and restoring and all that, is that how you reach millennials? That's who everybody wants. I mean, that get millennials, then you you figure you have the future. They glom onto your product and you keep them, and you've got them until 30, 40 more years. So is that what this is? Or is this what Goodell's hearing the players say? But who talks this way? And who set up a business with this as the objective? I can't think of one. So this is why I'm asking, do they know who their audience is, or do they not know, or do they know and they're embarrassed by it and trying to change it? I can't figure it out. All right. I've checked the email, and you people are wise. You're on. I know what the community's reference is, but if I act like I know everything, it leaves no room for people to know something I don't know. And everybody needs to feel like they know something I don't. It's self-esteem. I know what I know what communities, I know what that reference is all about. I know exactly. So do you. What was Barack Hussein Obama before he was a senator? He was what? Community organizer. The word has a very specific and narrow definition and application. Okay, Coley in Maine, great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Hi, Russ. Thank you. I would like to hear from all of the military that are overseas, all of the military that are retired, and how about we add on all the military men and women that are wounded right now for fighting for our freedom, for our safety. I would love for those football players to stand before them, give them their cockamamie story of why they cannot honor America and our American flag, our national anthem, and I'd like to hear the opinion of all these American men and women at the spoiled brat mentality of these football players and how they cannot honor all of this.
Here's the players are wise to what's going on. By the way, the military people would tell you this is why we fight and die. For people to be able to engage in that's what they would all tell you. They would tell you, some would tell you it hurts, some would tell you that it angers them, but it's still what they do. But the players, the ones that are speaking about this, are trying to make the point now, Coley, that it isn't about the flag, it isn't about the anthem, it's about the police and Trump. And it's about murder of innocent African Americans, and it's about Trump. They're protesting Trump. They're trying to say that they're not protesting the anthem or the flag at all. And the reason for that is because that's how it's seen, and they know that that's how it's going to be seen. And so they're trying to tell people, no, we love the flag, we love the anthem, that's why we're doing this. They know they're caught in a way. Back to the phones we go. Dan in Traverse City, Michigan. Welcome, sir. I'm glad you waited. How are you?
Thank you, Rush. It's an honor to speak to one of the three most powerful men in the country, and that would be Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and President Trump.
Wow. Thank you, sir, very much.
You're welcome. Hey, Rush, and your whole monologue here, you just set this call up perfectly, but I think, and if you don't mind, I'm going to paint myself as the part of the Trump half of the country, and not the standard Republican, but the new program that's here. And I think why the NFL and even the other half of the country still doesn't get it is reference the kneeling. The first aspect of disrespecting the country, well, they backed off that right away, the NFL and the players. And they're saying, well, it's not that. Because they know they've lost that right out of the gate, because the Trump half of the country is not buying the old program anymore. It's a new day. And so that they backed off right away. Now they're saying...
Hey, wait, hang on. I want to go with you step by step on this, because this intrigues me. So let's assume that this happened during Obama. What your theory is that it would have been treated as the whole country agrees, the whole country supports the players, Obama would have spoken out in favor of them, and a misrepresentation of who and what the country is would then have ensued, right? You're saying it's a new day now. They do this kind of stuff expecting after 8 years of Obama it's going to be applauded and supported, and lo and behold, they find out it's a new day.
Rush, that is why you are absolutely awesome. That's exactly what I'm saying. They just the let's just call it the Clinton half the country, because Hillary was. They just still don't realize it wasn't a normal changeover to a normal Republican, and so the Trump half the country. So let's go to this point too. So not only Trump half the country on the flag said, we're not standing for you disrespecting the flag, period, and we're forceful about it. But then would they say, well, it's because of racial discrimination, so at least maybe the Trump half of the country will accept that. And we're saying no. It's been 50 years of equal rights. The blacks have more rights, frankly, than the white male. I'm 57, Rush. I've never crossed in this country a black person that had less rights than me in my 57 years on Earth. So we're also saying we reject that there's racial discrimination going on of significance, and if there is, get an attorney, get Jesse Jackson, and you'll get $1 million from the government. And then the third point is, so let's say they move away from that. So then they're now saying, well, okay, fine. Then there is a racial, they're not going to say that, but let's say they did. Then they're going to say, okay, well, fine. But if you criticize football players kneeling, those are black football players, and that means you're racist. So you certainly can't do that. And the Trump half the country, for the third point of this whole deal, is saying, hey, you criticize Trump, black people, we're going to criticize whoever's behavior, whether it's a black person, a female, anyone, that is BS. And so the Trump half and the New Deal says we're also going to fire back no matter what color you are if we feel it's BS.
And this, just to make sure I fully understand, you're saying this is something that the people being fired back at don't understand? Because for the longest time, whatever public position they took, Obama or the media supported it and made it look like it was the majority position. And so they've grown accustomed to being thought of as never challenged and basically reflecting the majority of public opinion. And now they're in a new situation where they're seeing evidence every day that they don't occupy that position. Is that it's
Rush, that's exactly it, and that's why. I just for painting the picture of the Trump half the country, I want to paint it that way for talking purposes. But
all right, so where do you think it's going to end up?
You mean the NFL thing?
Yeah, this whole thing. How's it going to end? It's got to have an end at some point. What is that going to be?
Well, the NFL end or the country end? Which are you referring to? How the NFL ends going to
the controversy, the players kneeling, the players protesting, the league supporting them, the owners supporting them, and now the league and the owners joining forces to basically, no, we're protesting the president. Although the league hasn't pretty much said that, but they're implying it. Where does this end?
Okay, I think it's going to end where the league right now, you can tell. And you laid it out perfectly. They're used to the Obama years where they get praise. And now they're not getting praise anymore, and so they don't know what the hell to do. And I think they're going to each day move away from the whole thing, and they're going to tell the players, you've lost on three strikes. People don't feel you're discriminated against anymore. It's as your own behavior that's bringing the problem on the black community. People don't feel they can not criticize a black person anymore because they're afraid of being called a racist. And and people aren't going to stand for you disrespecting the country. I think the NFL is lost on three fronts. It's a new day, and I think and it's going to end in a few weeks, and there won't be many black players kneeling.
Okay, that's what I want. You think it's going to end with the kneeling stopping and the NFL, by virtue of that, signaling defeat. Now, I have to tell you, don't misunderstand this, but even with the transcription of your call, I missed some of what you said because of the nature of cell phone communications. A lot of you sounded very fuzzy, and I'm trying to keep up with your call is being transcribed. So I'm not sure I heard every point that you made. When you're talking about Jesse Jackson in there, I didn't get that. So don't be offended here if my reaction doesn't seem to match up with what you've said here. But best I can gather, he thinks that there's a bunch of people responding to this that used to not. That's the Trump half of the country. They're not going to take it anymore. just this blanket allegation that any criticism of any activity by African Americans is automatically racist, just like criticism of Obama was, that those days are over and the fear of being called a racist is ended. And so people are now fighting back. And there's a little hypocrisy, I think he said, with the fact these players are stars and making a lot of money and still protesting discrimination and so forth. The interesting part of it to me is where does it end and how? And how long does Trump continue to mention, hit on, focus on this, or what have you? And for whatever reason, either to solidify his base or to actually continue to pound the point. I can only react to this in an expert fashion personally, and it's affecting me in alternate moods of anger and sadness, and it just distresses me that I don't think this game is ever again going to be what it was to me. Now I know we're all supposed to be adaptive, and everything changes, and things today are not like they were 100 years. I understand that. But it's still tough. It's a tough thing to adjust to. It's a tough thing to look at this game, which, I mean, you people who've been listening to me for many, many years know what an avocation for me the NFL is. I mean, I've literally been absorbed in it. And they have taken so many, this whole thing has taken so many of the ingredients necessary to be a fan out of the mix. It's beginning harder and harder. I watch some of the owners react to this, and I just get disheartened. And what bothers me is that so much of this is based on things that aren't true. Hands up, don't shoot didn't happen. And I'm telling you, a lot of these guys have been convinced, they've been lied to, they've been told that it did. And to this day, there are a lot of people, because the media still hammers that. This Ferguson business, Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. He was murdered by a white cop. He wasn't. But people think the grand jury proceedings were rigged and that the whole thing was rigged against Michael Brown. And the anger at some of this stuff, the real stuff, I can understand the legitimacy of that. But so much of this stuff isn't true. And it's all become so politicized with everyday left-wing corruption. Grab soundbite number, we do. Grab soundbite number 7. Now, one of the things the drive-bys are doing here is pushing the idea that Colin Kaepernick needs to be hired. Whenever a quarterback gets hurt or a team has something happen that a quarterback opening happens, the drive-bys, in unison, they start saying the team should hire Kaepernick. This is the original perpetrator of all this. Coaches love team unity. You're not going to get that with Kaepernick on the team. Never mind the fact that he just can't play anymore. Not like he could, but Michael Bennett of the Seahawks said the quickest way to solve this is for a team to hire Bennett. Hire Kaepernick. If you hire Kaepernick, then most everybody's going to start standing up. Now stop and think of that for a second. This guy's filed a grievance, a baseless grievance against the NFL and the owners, claiming there's collusion keeping him out of the game. You and I both know that if these owners thought this guy could take him to the Super Bowl, they wouldn't care what he's doing. That's been the history of the league. Reprobate or model citizen, it doesn't matter. Can the guy win? Can the guy make my team exciting? Can the guy make people want to watch my team? Can my team get good ratings? Can I go to the Super Bowl? I'll deal with the other stuff. That's been the history of the league. They don't think Kaepernick can deliver any of that. In fact, it's just the exact opposite. Well, here's an example of how it happens. Aaron Rodgers just went down, probably gone for the season, Green Bay Packers. Mike McCarthy held a press conference on Monday. During the Q&A, reporter practically browbeats McCarthy to go out and hire Kaepernick.
I got 3 years invested in Brett Hundley. I have great confidence in Brett Hundley. I got 2 years invested in Joe Callahan. It's a quarterback room that has structure, and there's a philosophy behind the development of it. So I feel great about the room.
Would you entertain the idea of bringing Colin Kaepernick in to compete for that backup job?
Did you just listen to that question I just answered? I got 3 years invested in Brett Hundley, 2 years invested in Joe Callahan. The quarterback room is exactly where it needs to be.
Did you just listen to the... It's not even... The way this reporter's asking it isn't even a sports question. It's now politics. Somebody has to hire Cape, just like some team had to draft Michael Sam, the guy that openly came out as gay, University of Missouri, defensive standout. And the media was on it. If the league doesn't draft this guy, never mind the fact he couldn't play. But if some team didn't draft him, it meant the league was anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ, WTF, whatever. And now it's the same thing happening here with Kaepernick. It's a political question. It's a political demand. And that's just making it harder and harder for me to care anymore. What happened? Now, once again, folks, the fastest 3 hours in media has come to a screeching halt. Because we must. But thanks, everybody so much for being with us today. It's always a thrill and a delight to be here. Look forward, no matter how I feel, I look forward to it each and every day. We will be back at our usual haunts, EIB Southern Command, tomorrow. But face it, folks, other than the Ditto Cam, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm here, it doesn't matter where here is. And that's the mark of a true, highly trained professional. So have a great rest of the day and night, and we will see you back here in 21 hours.